Hi, and welcome to my series From the Spark, where I talk about my twin flame journey from the start to where I am now. This one is part two, twin flame soul recognition. So I'm going to talk about what it is, and I'm going to go a little deeper than what I may have touched on in previous videos. And this is just my experience, which is representative of encountering my twin flame on the 3D plane. So a lot of what I discuss will be from that perspective. For me, soul recognition was when I encountered my twin flame, and as a shared soul, it was awakened to itself in the other body. And I believe this happens for both counterparts at the same time, as it is a shared soul. So when the soul awakens, because it's the whole soul in two bodies, it awakens in both. So there's awakening to each other, which is the soul awakening to itself. So that's the soul. But then there's awakening to the journey, which that I believe can occur at different times for each person because that's personal. And that's due to the design of our personal journeys, as each twin will have their own journey. And much of that is probably dependent upon our ego, our environment, life circumstances, which means whatever imbalances we carry will be guided down certain paths to face those imbalances. And that can mean day to day lower vibrations or more deeply seated wounds. Both counterparts are guided to align. Why would only one twin be brought back to soul alignment? It's the whole soul. It's not split where one is never awakened and they've moved on and the other is going through all of this as a completely separate part. That's two individualized souls, in my opinion, and a different type of spiritual awakening. And I'm just mentioning this because there are some people who believe that your twin flame is only a catalyst to awaken you, and that's all. But if you share your soul with another, and I mentioned this in part one, I believe if you are a twin flame, you're going to be shown or told in a way that you absolutely know that you are a twin flame. Like, you might doubt a lot of things when it comes to your twin and even the journey, but you don't doubt you share your soul. So if you share your soul, you're not separate. You both go through spiritual growth. But like I said, it probably just happens at different times because the journey is personal. And why I believe we experience a separation. What the soul experiences in one, it experiences in the other, energetically speaking, not necessarily specific incidents. Now, I do believe there are different stages to awakening, and that's where soul recognition comes in. The soul is awakened to itself and the other person. Both people are consciously awakened to the unique bond. And the soul is reminding us of our divinity, of our divine energy. That's that masculine and feminine we hear mentioned so frequently. And during soul recognition, as a shared soul, we're brought to balance together as one. And I believe we're gifted our divine energy in this moment because we're likely not in balance, but we're gifted it to show us what union is like, what being in balance with our authenticity is like. And part of that authenticity is recognizing the pure love there. So at first, we're usually confused by this because it doesn't make sense to our mind, to our ego, because we're relating that feeling to our counterpart. But then we come to realize it is love we're feeling. But there's still confusion because we think it's emotional love, which still doesn't make sense because we didn't do anything to develop that with this person, usually. Again, this is my experience. Yours may be different. But eventually, I was led to know what I experienced was spiritual love or divine love. And even though it's always there within me, through my imbalances, I may not be tapping into it because as we become, the more imbalanced we become, the more our ego is in charge. And then the less likely we are to be in that divine love, in our divine energy. But at soul recognition, we're given that moment of divinity to feel that love. So, one, we can know that we have that with our twin, but then also through this, we're guided to realizing that love for ourselves. And eventually, we come to realize that we can have that with everyone. But it comes a little at a time, and that's what guidance is. It just comes in subtly. And the more we open our heart to receiving it, the better the flow of that guidance. So the soul incarnates as consciousness, but in order for it to truly experience, it has to forget what it knows. And I call this the unknowing soul or the oblivious soul. This is why awareness is such a big part of a spiritual journey, because part of aligning with our soul is about growing into awareness from a 3D standpoint. we're becoming aware of who we are at our core. Throughout our life, it's like the soul may not have always been able to flow at its intended frequency, which is vibrating through our chakras. But that's due to the imbalances we come into as we go through life. And I talk about this in this video here, but we all probably have imbalances within us from day to day. And it can be small things that are easy to bring back to balance, or there can be imbalances within us that have been there for a long time or go really, really deep. And these are the things that we may need healing in order to balance. Because I think we can find balance, like be in our authenticity, but if we don't heal those deeper wounds, it's easy to get out of balance when we're confronted with things that to do with them, that are associated with those wounds, that if we actually never heal them. So, and that makes it harder for us to maintain or get back into balance, or it may keep us out of balance altogether. And side note here, I don't think balance is about perfection as we often define it according to how we're perceived by others and how we are perceived by ourselves. That's not it at all. It's about being true to yourself, loving and honoring yourself. So it's really not complicated. It's not a tightrope balancing act. It's just finding yourself and being present in that. And even in union, it's not like you're always going to be in balance. And as soon as you're imbalanced, you repel your twin. I mean, it's not like that. It's about the energetic flow. And that's what this journey preps and equips us for, to learn to recognize when we're not being authentic and how to own up to that. And even though it may bring us down, we know how to not let it keep us down. So I think at soul recognition, we're brought back to our divine energy. We experience that soul adrenaline rush, and we're brought back to the balance of our soul frequency. We're gifted with it. And I believe this because during my soul recognition, I know both of us were in our divine energy. Now, I didn't know that then, but later I came to recognize that. And he was very much in his masculine, and I was very much in my feminine. Okay, so after meeting our other self, we go back to our lives, and being in our divine energy doesn't usually mesh with our lives as they were before soul recognition. So, for example, you may have a busy, hectic job. Maybe your life is a little chaotic. You recognized there's a unique bond in this person, like it's nothing you've ever experienced before, and you can't make sense of it, like I said. And you may even try to push it out, but it doesn't go away. And after that phenomenal experience of awakening to them, and it doesn't just come in and leave, it stays with you both. You both go back to your lives, and that intense energy is still there. And because you're in those things, again, that may have caused the imbalances to begin with, that activation sets in and it takes on that intense energy. And the divine energy is no longer in balanced flow. And this is also part of our free will. Then it's like you're in an alternate reality. You feel a little out of place being in your old life, even though it could have been hours ago or a day ago that soul recognition occurred. And you start coming down from that high. It feels like you're not where you're supposed to be. It just feels weird. And they experience this too, but depending on their circumstances and their ego, their reaction will be different. But this is where the running and chasing energy show up. And just a note, I don't believe that happens electromagnetically, as in positive and negative. We're not electrically charged poles, but we do represent the traits of the soul, which are polarities in nature. When we're balanced, we use those energies as needed, depending on our current circumstances. However, when we interact directly with our twin, I think this physical interaction causes us to balance to our core design, because we're interacting as a whole, with one being more to the feminine and the other being more to the masculine. But I don't believe it's like if one pushes, then one automatically pulls, which is about charge polarities. But that's for another video in this series. And this is just my belief. Follow your intuition when it comes to your own experience, which is how I came to my own understanding. Okay, because the soul recognizes itself in two bodies, it comes to that awareness that it's one system, and the objective is unity. And that can take on different directions, and there are a lot of different things that play a part in that, such as unconditional love, but ultimately it's about unity. As I mentioned before, the soul is whole in each twin, and both will be guided to coming back to that balance with their physical and spiritual. But that happens on many different levels, including with each other. If it's just one, that's not unity as a shared soul. If it's just one person, that's something different. We're twins. Twins. And I do believe it's possible to be activated by experiencing soul recognition through another plane of physicality. I'd like to just throw this in there, like such as astrally. And there are many other possibilities. I just haven't explored that too much yet because I'm more focused on my particular experience. But during soul recognition, because we're in our divine energy in that moment, the masculine in turn, MI, is awakened to the divine feminine energy within their counterpart. And this is likely mostly subconsciously at first, but the MI feels that energy. They resonate with this particular feminine energy like no one else before. And it's not to say that they haven't resonated with divine feminine energy in someone before, but this is their soul core frequency that is only shared with their twin flame. So no one else can even begin to compare. Their soul has been ignited and they feel their soul's purpose. And they don't recognize it then, but they feel that energy. And that's why we can see their potential. We can sense it. We can see it in their eyes. And they sense it in us because we're seeing our divine energy in each other, our divine design, our greatest potential. And that's part of why we immediately feel love, even though we don't know that's what it is. But we're reminded of that spiritual love right then. So when the masculine intern goes through activation, they realize that their methods and behaviors before this just won't work with this person because they feel that divine feminine energy in their counterpart and it basically freaks them out. But at this stage, they don't see that divine energy within themselves, and the feminine doesn't see it in themselves either. And that's all yet to come. So, how does that make us feel? Well, during activation, the masculine in turn has gone back to their life. They're probably immediately experiencing imbalances. So they can slowly or even quickly get out of flow with that divine energy that they were gifted with. And this is part of what causes the fear based energies to really take over, and still likely very much subconsciously. They feel they can't be in wounded energy with their counterpart and get away with it. Like they feel they can't be avoidant or dishonest or cowardice. They feel they can't be lazy or impatient or insecure or anything that comes from fear. Like they recognize that that just doesn't work for them with this person. And gradually, their intuition guides them away from all this. But depending on how deep all of this is in effect in their lives, they're likely not going to turn away from that right away. So what happens? They run. They do exactly what they're feeling they can't get away with their counterpart. So they have to get away from this person because this goes deep. Like this is overwhelming to them because they feel it in their heart and they recognize that. They just don't know why. And each counterpart doesn't know that the other is going through this in this way. Like I said, it's mostly subconscious at first. But the same thing is happening to the feminine in turn. They realize subconsciously that the divine masculine energy in the other person. And when their imbalances come back in through the activation stage, they learn that they can't be needy or jealous, insecure, controlling, or like over emotional, anything that comes from fear or the ego. And the feminine in turn may try this at first, but this is when all of these things come to the surface for us to recognize during the activation stage, which is commonly referred to as running and chasing. And depending on their ego, their conditioning, life circumstances, it may take longer for some to acknowledge these issues than others. And this applies to both counterparts. So that leads into activation, which is my next video. So if you enjoy this, please leave a like and subscribe if you would like to see more. And thanks for watching.